Good evening, everyone, and welcome to day 478. Yep, back in the United States, recovering from 2 weeks there, getting back on time zones. All is well. Thanks for all of you for continuing to stay with us during these last 2 weeks while we were traveling. We continued with the updates, and we will continue no matter what. So thank you for being here as always. Tonight, a special update, extended update. Tonight is all about translation and voiceovers. When I'm on the road, it's difficult to get the voiceovers done, but now back in the studio here for a couple of days, recovering. Folks, I've got it all. Over the last 24 hours, Prigozhin giving his analysis on the war. Of course, he being the director and leader, that militant group, the Wagner, coming out of Russia. Additionally, Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, giving his thoughts and opinions on nuclear weapons, entry into the war. Vladimir Putin speaking at the Russian Economic Forum there in St. Petersburg. Putin giving away awards. Putin speaking to Biden. Zelensky talking to NBC. We've got it all tonight. So tonight, not about technical analysis, not about maps, but tonight is all, what are these guys saying? Whether they're speaking in Russian or Ukrainian, what are they saying in the English language? And tonight, we've got it all for you. So folks, buckle your seatbelts and get ready. It's unbelievable what you are getting ready to hear. I don't know where else you hear this on the internet, all of this together, but tonight you're going to hear it here. So this is the last 24 hours in English, everything voiced over. Make sure you are sharing, liking, commenting, telling others about this. Folks, your help, your community, your partnership helps us to help Ukraine tell the truth and do all of our social activity there in the front lines and with those that are struggling in Ukraine during this war. So thank you for being here once again. Let's jump right into it tonight, day 478. We're going to start with Prigozhin. I've got a few minutes here of him speaking, giving his analysis on the war. And for those of you that thought Wagner is going away, Wagner and the defense leaders like Shoigu, they're fighting their enemies, folks. You know, it's all a game. It's all a show. They're fighting for Russia. They have their own ways of doing it. Prigozhin tonight giving his analysis on the war within the last 24 hours. And he makes a statement. We're going to be back, baby. Here it is. Prigozhin. What's going on? In a nutshell? Well, here's what's happening. The Ukrainians have launched an offensive. Now, I'm going to tell you the way it really is, not dreams. They are doing an offensive right now, and they are cutting certain parts in the Zaporozhye region against us. At the same time, they are now covering their left flank. Of course, that's our right, their left, where all these battles are going on. These are the locations that they're working in right now. So by today, they've managed to occupy about 100 square kilometers, maybe even a little more according to my personal calculations. They move very slowly. They move very calmly. They have lost 2 Leopards. They've lost Bradleys and so on. Now, I'm not saying these things for their PR, but for us to sensibly evaluate what's happening. Therefore, it's way too early to rejoice. So we need to mobilize and to come together, because they are not going to stop until we either hit them on the head or they get some kind of satisfying result. Therefore, in my opinion, and according to the assessment of the military that are on the ground, there is not enough being done to resist the enemy to this point. Right now, we are resting. We are preparing. We still have more to do. We left on June 5th, and according to the forecast, on August the 5th, our Wagner division will be in full combat readiness, and we will continue to carry out the tasks that have set before us. We're coming back. Now, regarding those fairy tales that the leadership of the Ministry of Defense tells the Russian people, trying to figure out some of the intricacies about signing contracts with the Ministry of Defense. Listen, That's a bunch of mess. If you're here to defend Russia, you're here to defend Russia. No one can forbid a Russian person to defend their land. Not the Minister of Defense, neither anyone else. Only God has this right, God alone. Therefore, we will continue to defend our land no matter what the military functions are stating in the leadership. As a matter of fact, that's how things are now. So there you have it. That's Prigozhin. We're back. He's also giving analysis. Yes, Ukraine's taken about 100 square kilometers, maybe a little bit more in his calculations. Did you notice this time? He's not screaming. He's not ranting. He's not raving, not acting like a lunatic. He even was saying, we're going to work together. Every Russian's job is to defend their territory. So, folks, that's the update within the last 24 hours coming out of Wagner. For those of you that thought they're going to go away, they're mad, they're going to be eliminated. No, folks, it's not going to happen. Everything is calculated on their end. I promise you 100%. And according to Prigozhin, August 5, they're going to be back in the battle. Folks, this summer is going to be absolutely crazy as this war unfolds. Now, Lukashenko, let's jump over to Belarus. He was being interviewed within the last 24 hours, asking what, how, and when will Belarus get involved in this war in a higher level? Check this piece out. Lukashenko talking about Belarus getting involved. So let's talk about this. What will be a trigger for you to join this special military operation? Well, we will enter forcefully into this aggression if anything happens against us. We now have enough power to respond. Yeah, of course you do. So if anything concerns my people or concerns my state, I will not allow anything here to be destroyed that we have been creating for a quarter of a century together with the Belarusian people. And we will not throw 10 million people to the mercy of other people. I mean, how many Russians are here? 3 million. So I'm responsible for 13 million people. Therefore, without hesitation, if aggression is committed against us, we will respond. So what's happening right now on the border, you're not calling them aggression? No, that's far from aggression. We can cope with the little things that are happening, and we will take care of our border too. These are provocations. Even in the Belgorod region in Russia, that's not aggression. That's just provocation. So, of course, Lukashenko playing down the incursions across the Russian border and even the minor things that have happened around the Belarusian border there north of Ukraine, saying, no, they're not. That's not any invasion or anything. Those are just provocations. But if anything gets heated up on our territory, I have a responsibility for 10 million Belarusians and 3 million Russians, and we will defend ourselves accordingly. So, there you have it. Remember, it was just a few weeks ago, Lukashenko was dead. Remember? Folks, this is why I encourage you every time dealing with this place, dealing with the madness of the Kremlin, dealing with Belarus, dealing with all of the chaos and the propaganda, you have to wait and see. And right now, we are seeing what is happening. Now, Lukashenko goes on to talk about nuclear weapons as the interview goes further. Check this piece out. Lukashenko talking about nukes and Belarus. How was it for you taking and making the decision to place nuclear weapons into your country? Won't this turn you into a target? How did you formulate this for yourself? You sat down one evening and decided so? Well, I sat down and said, I'm going to be a target, but I'm sure I'm one right now. In fact, I'm even more than a target. Don't you see the yellow? These are Polonyos. And those machines only have conventional weapons. So I didn't just ask Putin. I requested for him to return nuclear weapons to me. Now, I do not need strategic ones. What for? I'm not going to make war with America. Tactical nukes are completely sufficient. The Iskanders, they reach 500 kilometers or further. So that's the nuclear that I need. So I told him, if you have a problem with tactical weapons, you can deploy nuclear charges in my equipment now. He said, no, it's just easier for us to supply them to you. Well, in this case, they are supplying, and there are many things I cannot say in front of a camera right now, but we have a good agreement. We're implementing it. In fact, we've always been a target. The world wanted to rip us apart ever since 2020, but no one has ever waged a war against a nuclear country. Here we have rockets and bombs. We've received stuff from Russia, but this bomb is 3 times more powerful than the one used in Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Over 80,000 people died there instantly. 250,000. And here's a bomb 3 times more powerful? No, I don't know, but maybe 1 million people will die instantly. God forbid that these weapons have to be used. And yet, this is a limited territory. Okay, so you said we have received rockets and bombs from Russia? Well, let's go step by step. Once we receive it, we'll blindfold you and we'll take you there with the camera to the storage facility, and we'll show you where it will be distributed to. Here in Belarus, we have so many nuclear storage facilities. Of course, we used to have a lot of them, and we have now restored 5 or 6 of those locations because we're not going to put all of our nukes in a single location. So what is this agreement between you and Putin? Is there an aggression that will force an action? Look, I hear this all the time. These are Russian weapons. You can't use them without Russia. Listen, if a war starts, am I just going to look around? No way. I'll pick up the phone wherever he is, and he will pick it up. He calls to me, I pick up the phone at any moment. Even now. So why is there a problem to coordinate a strike? It's not a problem at all. There's nothing even to talk about. All of our agreements are now in place already. Let the enemies tremble. Folks, does it feel like we're back in the middle of a Cold War on steroids? Let the enemies tremble. It's not a problem for us to coordinate a strike together. We're loaded. We've repaired and restored 5 or 6 of our nuclear storage sites. We used to have many, many. Folks, this is what's really happening right in front of our eyes. Lukashenko running the big words today. Now, I promised you Prigozhin, Lukashenko, and now we're going to jump over to Putin. Vladimir Putin today doing 3 major things. Actually, within the last 24 hours, he was giving an Order of Courage award to a soldier. Folks, you're not going to believe this, but I'm going to tell you. This soldier is actually accused of war crimes by Ukraine. This particular soldier is accused of war crimes. They have proof that he was doing criminal activities in Bucha over a year ago when the war began. And today, last 24 hours, President Putin giving him an award. I'm going to show you that now. He's just chatting with them. A couple of things I want you to notice. Look at the ethnicity of these particular Russians. As I've told you guys many times, most of the early on Russians that are fighting are Central Asian Russians or Far Eastern Russians. It's not the Russians from Western Russia. And you can see this. President Putin here just making small talk, giving an award away. Check this out. Are you from Kurgan? Is your family there too? No, my family's in Buryatia. Buryatia, big family. Well, I have a wife, 2 kids. Oldest son is 12, daughter's 7. Are they waiting for you? Of course. I see. So there you have, that's released by the media there in Russia, looking at the great job that President Putin is doing, making small talk, having the soldiers around. You could see the award on their chest. He had already given to them, and they're just making small talk. How's your family? How many do you have? Oh, what region are you from? Just doing a show for the rest of the world, and particularly the Russian citizens to see. Folks, it's a mess. He's giving an award to a guy that committed war crimes in Ukraine. That's number one. Now, two major things have happened over the last 24 hours. The first one, President Putin attended a correspondence meeting, war correspondents, war journalists, of course, Russian war journalists. He has them sitting around a table and he's talking to them about the war. Now, this is crazy what I'm getting ready to show you. The first clip I'm going to show you is actually President Putin giving the daily update on the war, talking about what has been attacked, what has been taken out, as he sits around the table with the war correspondents. And really interesting here, in fact, I've got quite a bit of this tonight, tank comments. Yes, tank, T-A-N-K. Some of these numbers are ludicrous. Here, President Putin at the correspondence table. Remember what I've taught you guys for almost a year and a half. He's sitting close to these guys, not at distance. Here it is, talking to the correspondents. There was an attack this morning in the Shakhtar's direction. Up to 100 men, 4 tanks, 2 armored vehicles. On the Bremivka direction, also tanks and several armored vehicles. There were attacks in several directions. Several tanks, several armored vehicles, they were destroyed. Personnel was hit, but nothing reached our front lines. Now, they lost over 160 tanks, and 360 armored vehicles during this time. So that's their offensive that is going on, and the results to this moment are just as I mentioned. Yeah, that's right. I can't make this stuff up. There in the bottom left corner, you see it written in Russian, correspondence meeting. He's given the daily report on where the attacks were happening, where the counteroffensive was coming, what Russia was doing to respond. And, oh yeah, by the way, 160 tanks. 186 tanks. And you can see the journalist. Oh, yeah. Nice. Okay. At the same table, now he's going to start talking about Kherson. He's going to talk finally about the Novokakhovka Dam incident. And really interesting here, he makes a statement. I'll preface you or prepare you. He makes a statement about the dam being destroyed and the water going everywhere. And why would Russia pour water on their own territory? But then he makes a statement and he says, this is going to sound a little strange, but this has completely stopped Ukraine's southern offensive. Here it is. Listen, we are certainly not interested in flooding our own land because this has terrible consequences for the territories we control, which are Russian. That's the first point. Now, secondly, unfortunately, I'm going to say a very strange thing now. Unfortunately, this has doomed their counteroffensive in this direction. Why, unfortunately? Because it's not possible to do an offensive there, and that's better for us because it would have been bad for them to move in that direction. But because of the flood, therefore, their offensive cannot take place. There you have it. If you were ever wondering, still sitting on the fence, who blew the dam up? Russia blew it up. Putin signed off on it. Why? Well, it's a little strange, and he smirks. They now cannot perform the southern offensive. And in that statement, he's actually right. That land completely devastated down there. Now, the correspondence meeting continues. Putin begins talking about NATO, and also he's talking about the Aretha Franklin buzzword, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, respect. Here you go. You know what? Watch the journalist agreeing with him. It's so interesting. Listen, whatever Ukraine is, we should treat it with respect. That does not mean that this is an excuse to treat us without respect. See, this is what this is all about, respect. And if there are some people who live in these territories that think they want to live in a separate, independent state, then we should treat this with respect also. But why should they have to live at our expense and in our historical territories? If these people want to live there, then let them influence their political leadership to build normal relations with Russia so that we will not be threatened from these territories, because that's the very problem right now. Look how much we used to argue and have problems with Belarus and Lukashenko. We were even quarreling. It's clear that the president of the country, in this case of Belarus, he defends his interest as he deems fit in a consistent and tough manner. We've had many arguments, but would it have ever crossed anyone's mind to start a conflict with Belarus? It would not even occur in our minds to start any conflicts with Ukraine if we had normal human relations. There is no need for any union state. But they made an anti-Russian state there. And they did not just create it, but they have created it at the cost of their own existence, and they started to strengthen it. You see, that's the problem. When Ukraine became independent, it was written in the Declaration of Independence that Ukraine was a neutral nation. And then in 2008, suddenly in full health, nothing happened in Crimea. Nothing. Suddenly they moved to declare that they want to join NATO, and then NATO opens the door for them. They stated that at the famous summit in Bucharest, that the door to NATO was open for Ukraine. They lied to everyone, all of us, that NATO would not expand to the east, but our historical territories with Russian-speaking population are in NATO. But they lost their minds? Completely. They know they pose a threat, but they still purposely act when we try to have normal relations, and that's the problem. And for those people out there who want to feel like Ukrainians in Ukraine and live in an independent state, you're welcome. Do whatever you want, and we will respect that. But don't threaten us. There you have that continuing message. Don't threaten us. You know, you get a lot of insight at that correspondence meeting, that war correspondence meeting. Vladimir Putin giving history on the Minsk agreements. Of course, that's his perspective. Also talking about NATO. Ukraine was to remain neutral. Now the door is open. All of these things are happening, and this is what has pushed us to defend our sovereign territory. And that's his viewpoint on that, folks. Right in English, the translations are good. That's what's happening. So that was the correspondence dinner or correspondence meeting. I hope this is giving you tonight some insight, some direct translation as to what is really happening. Now, today in St. Petersburg, Russia, another economic forum. People have come from all over the world. In fact, today, President Putin directly having a private meeting with the president or the director, however it's called. I think he's called the president of the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. When I was in Africa, I showed you the video of the Burj Khalifa there in Dubai being lit up with the Russian flag to celebrate Russian Day. And now the president of the UAE is in Moscow meeting with President Putin directly, strengthening ties, strengthening relationships. Folks, as we always say, the world becoming more divided by the minute, and most of that, in my opinion, due to the weakness of the West and the absence of leadership in not only Europe, but America as well. I'm not talking about giving money, not talking about giving stuff. I'm talking about a bold leader who will stand up and say, back it down or it's over. And instead of waiting for Russia to draw a red line, why hasn't the West drawn a red line, of course, which is already crossed February February 24th, 2022. Folks, that's where we're at. So now, this economic forum going on in St. Petersburg. President Putin sitting on the stage, waxing eloquent. Lots of translation for you tonight. I hope that this is bringing you some understanding and that you enjoy having the capability to hear in English what these guys are actually saying. A lot of work went into the stream for tonight. Here, Putin speaking about the Ukrainian counteroffensive, sitting back in his chair on the day of the economic forum there in St. Petersburg. Today, here it is. What about the counteroffensive? Well, there's some deception. Somewhere, Ukrainian units managed to reach the first line. Somewhere, they fail. That's not the question. The question is that they use so-called strategic reserves, which consist of several components. The first of them is designed to break through our defenses. The second is to use troops to entrench themselves in our territory, to move through the territory, and in neither area are they achieving their objectives. That's what's important. Indeed, their losses are very high. For example, it's more than 1 in 10 to the Russian army. That's a fact. And in terms of equipment every day, there's an increase in their loss of equipment. As of today, they've lost 186 tanks. 186, I think, right? Yeah, 186, and 418 armored vehicles. Once again there, Vladimir Putin struggling to remember how many tanks have been lost, but you can see he's sitting there just discussing it openly about the counteroffensive. He said, yeah, Ukraine's hitting the front line in some places, but he made a statement. There's two things I draw your attention to. Of course, Moscow hosting this economic forum for Russia, for Central Asia, for the Far East, and people are there. It's loaded, folks. The beautiful stage, all of the lighting, the beautiful background, everything's nice. It's telling you something. You have to pay attention to these other things that are happening. They're just going on with life as normal while the war is unfolding there in Ukraine. If on the opposite side, you see Ukraine struggling, fighting every day. President Zelensky sleeps, he said, about 2 hours a night, trying to defend his homeland and defend Ukraine, defend Western ideology, to defend all that is good, to defend a hope and a future for generations to come there in Ukraine, and to defend a sovereign territory. And Putin just sitting back, counting tanks, going on with life as normal. He even comes up with this fictitious idea that Ukraine losing 10 soldiers for every one that Russia loses. Folks, all you've got to do is watch, listen, pay attention, and that alone will tell you the truth as to what's happening in this war. Now, Putin then goes on and talks about the enemy having no success. Same meeting, same time. Here it is. Everything that is happening is an attempt to provoke us to respond. Look, if we destroyed 5 Patriot complexes near Kyiv, what would stop us from destroying any building, any facility in the center of Kyiv? There are no limitations on us. We do not do it for a number of reasons. Lukashenko talking in the background. Listen, there are many of them. I will tell you about these considerations later, but not publicly. But there is a possibility, and everybody understands that we may. Everyone is just waiting for us to start pushing buttons, and there's no such need. That's the first consideration. There is no such need because the enemy has no success on the front line. That's the point. The enemy having no success. Yeah, we have buttons to push, but there's no need. Couple of things I draw your attention to in that clip. First of all, you see the folks' faces. They're just smiling and enjoying him talking about that. Once again, Putin trying to remember his numbers and remember the strategy that he's waxing. You get the comments from off stage. You see it unfolding right in front of you, but he's confident the enemy has no success. And in the final point, I'm sure you caught it. You know, we've taken out 5 Patriot systems. What's to stop us from hitting a key building in the center of Kyiv? Ukraine only has 2 Patriot systems. Yes, others are promised, but only 2. And yes, Russia did inflict damage on one of those. It's still operational. It's still working, but there's only 2. So you can just see the lunacy and people just clapping. People says, yeah, great job, Vladimir. Wonderful, Volva. All right, how about this one? Mr. Biden, you are now on alert. Vladimir Putin calls you out by name today. Here it is. President Biden, he's a grown man, experienced politician. It's not my job to lecture him. Let him do as he sees fit. And we're going to do what we believe is in the best interest of the Russian Federation, the people of Russia. And everybody, they're going to have to reckon with that. The applause goes on. I just cut it out. Oh, Mr. Biden, you're experienced. You can do whatever you're going to do, but it doesn't matter to us. We're going to do what we need to do. I know you're out there tonight going, how can people believe this stuff? More than 50% of the world believes this stuff. More than 50% of Americans believe this stuff. You say, oh, no, you're crazy, man. No, I'm not. I'm the one that's translating this and showing it to you tonight. I'm telling you right now. The man has a lot of support, and it's the power of the propaganda. That's why we're here translating, trying to tell the truth, trying to share. That's why you're here. That's why we ask you to comment, to join the Patreon, to do all of these things. Folks, we're this close from waking up in a world that we no longer recognize. And that's just Russia, Ukraine. We don't even have to talk about the nuclear activity happening inside Iran, the unrest in the Middle East, China doing what they're doing. It's the list goes on and on and on. And we're that close from waking up in a world that we do not recognize. That is why we must do our part. Now, a couple of last things I'm going to share with you. I told you I have some Zelensky tonight. I'm going to give that to you in just a moment. But before that, what makes you proud to be a Russian? What makes you proud? Man on the Street interview. Here, little insight. This was happening outside of the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. What makes you feel proud of Russia today? I don't know how to answer you. Modern Russia? Yeah. I don't know. Nothing. I can't say what I'm proud of. The desire to survive. Well, I always collect money for sick children. What can I say? Everything's fine. I'm proud of living in Russia. I'll die here. So far, nothing. The state's thieves. Nothing else. There. Very interesting. Man on the street there. What makes you proud? What are you proud of? You can see them thinking. And you know what's interesting? Many people always say, well, it's the old people that are trapped by that mentality. If you noticed in that video, the only 2 on there, other than that one older lady that supported, were 2 younger fellas. The others that were against were actually older people. The last guy there calling the nation a bunch of thieves, older guy. Of course, those are people that grew up in the Soviet Union. So we need to break down that mentality. Well, it's just the older people, the younger people are not. No, there's a lot of division even inside of Russia, as you can see, and it's not always as you think. Now, on Patreon, I'm putting out the full NBC update. I've already done it on YouTube. I'll add it there. But Zelensky talking about what is next. NBC granted an exclusive interview with President Vladimir Zelensky, and I have pulled out this clip talking about Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Of course, we've already had the Novokakhovka Dam. It's gone. It's gone. It will not be rebuilt. It's not possible until there's peace in the land, and that will be a major, major effort. That dam originally being built in 1952. Here we are in 2023. But President Zelensky confirming what we have talked about, and we continue to try and remind the world about. Watch out for the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. It's going to be next. There's going to be something that happens there. Here, President Zelensky talking on an interview with NBC.
President Zelensky also had a dire warning. He blamed Russia for blowing up a dam, which Russia denies, flooding dozens of villages, and tells us the next Russian target is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
Russia does want to blow up the station.
Why would they want to do that?
Because, like with the dam, they are not interested in Ukraine's security. They always need instability here and want the world to pressure Ukraine to stop the conflict.
That, folks, spot on. That 30-second clip. I've got all of it already on YouTube on another clip, and I'll put it on Patreon as well. But Zelensky making it very clear. We see the next target, or they're going to be looking to hit Zaporozhye nuclear power plant somehow. The reporter asked, why on earth would they do that? He gave two reasons. A, it shows that Russia has no care for Ukraine whatsoever. And secondly, it is to bring destabilization. And I believe he's spot on and accurate with that, of course, because the more that region is destabilized, Russia hoping that the world will pressure Ukraine to give up, to stop, to give up the four regions, to let Russia have Kherson, Zaporozhye, Donetsk, Lugansk, and Crimea, draw a new border, and let's be done with this thing. And of course, Ukraine reiterating every day, we will not ever quit. We will lose everything, because we are fighting only for our original 1991 borders, including Crimea. So we'll see. Now, finally tonight, what I want to share with you. I've given you a lot tonight in English, everything translated. Well, folks, no translation on this one. All you have to do is watch with your eyes. Of course, one last time, referring to the Novokakhovka Dam, which was blown, the devastation that has come. We're talking 700,000 people now without drinking water. The wells are all, I don't want to use the word poison, but basically the water is poisoned. The rivers poisoned, everything. It's an ecological disaster. And on the occupied side of the river, many Ukrainians there are trapped still. And Ukraine released some footage through United 24 showing how even in the most dangerous areas, Ukraine flying drones over onto the occupied territory, dropping food for their Ukrainian citizens that are now under Russian captivity. Great piece here as we close out the update for tonight. Great little clip there being released, just showing Ukraine doing everything they can to take care of their people, even the ones that are in occupied territory. Just an amazing clip there showing the drone dropping some aid. You could also see the devastation, the floodwaters, people trapped. I can tell you it's hot. It's not good, but nobody's giving up. And we will not give up. I want to thank you for being here on this Friday night, day 478, folks. I hope that you appreciate all of the effort that went into the translations and the voiceovers. If you do, make sure you tell your neighbors, share, like, comment, donate, give, all of the above. We thank you for being here. We thank you for being part of the community. And we will see you with the next update on Monday or sooner if something goes sideways. You guys be blessed. Have a great Friday night. We'll see you soon.